Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. Great to see you all again. Can somebody just give me a thumbs up in the chat comments to let me know that you can see and hear me okay? Okay, thank you, Rach. Brilliant. Good to see you again. And you, Paul. Okay, today I want to start with a really simple question. If working harder was the answer, wouldn't you already have the business that you want? Say that again. If working harder was the answer, wouldn't you already have the business that you want? And the reason I ask that question is because most of the people that I speak to that are running a business aren't lazy people. They're not short of commitment. They're not lacking ambition. In fact, the opposite is usually true. They care deeply about the business. They take responsibility. They're working long hours. They're carrying lots of pressure. And when something is wrong, their first instinct is often to do more. Work longer hours, push harder, take more responsibility back, chase more sales, add more tasks to an already full diary. But here's the problem with that approach. More often than not, effort applied to the wrong things doesn't create a better business. Effort applied to the wrong things doesn't necessarily create a better business. It creates a more exhausted leader. And that's what I want to explore today, because there comes a point where working harder stops being the solution. And in actual fact, it can actually be a big part of the problem. And I know that because for many years I wore being busy like it was some kind of badge of honour. In fact, I used to strut around like I was the sheriff of Busy Town, working long days with a full diary, constant activity. I was always needed, I was always involved, there was always something else to deal with. And from the outside, that might have looked impressive. It might have looked like commitment. It might have looked like leadership. It might have looked like success to some people. But as I came to discover, being busy and being productive are not the same thing. And being needed by everyone isn't always evidence that you're leading well. Sometimes all that neediness is evidence that the business has become way too dependent on you, the leader. And that for me was a really uncomfortable truth that I had to face up to. But it's a really important one, because if the business, or if your business only works because you're the one constantly pushing, fixing, chasing, rescuing everything, then you don't really have a business that works for you, do you? You've created yourself a really demanding job. And that's quite possibly the most demanding job that you've ever had. Now, don't get me wrong, hard work is valuable. I'm not suggesting for one minute that effort doesn't matter. It does, it really does. But hard work can often, and does often, compensate for weaknesses within the business. So you can compensate for unclear roles by stepping in yourself. You can compensate for weak systems by remembering everything. You can compensate for poor delegation by checking every single detail. You can compensate for low margins by selling more. You can compensate for weak leadership by chasing your team. You can compensate for avoided decisions by working around the problem. And for a while, that might appear to work okay. But eventually the cracks will show, because you're the person that's holding everything together. You've become the memory of the business, the problem solver, the decision maker, the quality controller, the emergency service. And the more capable you are, the easier it is for this to happen, because every time something goes wrong, you're able to swoop in like a superhero and fix it, which can mean that the immediate problem disappears, but the underlying cause remains. And that means that the same problem is going to come back sometime in the future. And then again, you'll be needed to swoop back in again. But here's the thing, that's not progress, is it? That's just repetition. And this connects deeply and directly with the last week's live session where we explored the difference between fixing a problem and treating the symptom. Now, if you missed that one, you might want to go back and watch it again, and you'll be able to find it in my LinkedIn, Facebook feeds, and on my YouTube channel. While you're there, by the way, just click on subscribe button so that you won't miss any future posts. Now, something I found that when a business is under pressure, there tends to be three common responses: hire someone new, sell more stuff, work longer hours. And yes, sometimes those things are necessary, but before you go jumping in and doing any of those things, there's a question to ask. What's really causing the problem? What's really causing the problem? Because, for instance, let's say sales are low and you do something about it. But if sales increase and your margins are weak, then more sales are likely to create more work and more pressure. If you recruit someone into a business that's got unclear roles and weak systems, you might simply add more cost and confusion. And if you work longer to compensate for poor delegation, you might temporarily improve the result, but at the same time you make the business even more dependent on you. And that's why working harder often feels more productive in the short term, because you can see movement. Emails are getting answered, problems are getting solved, customers are getting called back, jobs are getting finished, but the same problems are often waiting for you again the following week. Now, I often say that your diary, our diary, my diary, because is a lie detector. Because your diary and my diary reveals what's really happening in the business. So you might say that you want to grow your business. You might say you want to develop your team. You might say that you want to improve your profitability. You might say that you want more time to think, learn and lead. But where did your time actually go last week? How much of it was spent doing the work that only you could do? How much of it was spent doing work that someone else could have done? And how much of it was spent on work that you shouldn't have been doing at all? And that's really worth thinking about, because a full diary can make us feel important, but a full diary doesn't automatically mean you're doing important work, does it? And the truth is, a leader's job is not to do everything. A leader's job is to make sure the right things are getting done. So going forward, rather than asking, how can I work harder? How can I fit more in? How can I get through this week? I would encourage you to ask three questions. The first one being, what am I doing that I should no longer be doing? Not what could you do faster, not what could you squeeze into a smaller gap. What should you no longer be doing? Because some of the biggest breakthroughs in business don't come from adding something, they come from removing something. Now that could be a task, it might be a meeting, a habit, an approval process, a customer that continually drains the business's time and profit. It might be a responsibility that should have been delegated months ago. The second question is, what problems keep returning because I've only treated the symptom? What problems keep returning because I've only treated the symptom? Now you might keep correcting the same mistakes. Perhaps cash is always tight. Perhaps that your team are continually asking the same questions. You might have customers that are experiencing the same delays. It might be that every holiday that you take ends up getting interrupted. Perhaps every month ends with a frantic push for more sales. Recurring problems leave sales. And when something keeps coming back, it's often because the true cause is yet to be addressed. The third question is, what needs to change so that the business produces a better result without continually requiring more from me? That's the question that for me begins to change everything, because it moves you away from simply working in the business, and it gets you thinking about how the business really works, because the goal is not to avoid hard work. The goal is to make sure that your hard work is building something better. So for instance, you could be building better systems, clearer roles, stronger margins, more capable people, better communication, clearer standards, faster decision making, less dependence on you. Your effort needs to be creating future capacity within the business. It should make next week's easier, not simply help you survive through today. And that is the distinction, because if you spend an hour solving a problem that's going to return tomorrow, you've been busy. But if you spend an hour creating a process that prevents the problem from returning, then you've built something. If you answer every question that you get from your team, so then you've been helpful. But if you teach your team to make better decisions without you, then you've built something. If you rescue every customer issue yourself, you've protected today. But if you improve the system that caused the issue, then you've protected the future. That's high impact work. And one of the biggest limitations in many businesses is it's not a lack of opportunity, it's leader dependency. Everything comes back to one person. Every important decision, every complaint, every quote, every problem, every approval, every difficult conversation. And often the leader has unintentionally trained their team to behave that way. The team asks, the leader answers. The team waits, the leader decides. The team makes a mistake, the leader takes the work back. And over time, the leader becomes more capable. At the same time, the team becomes less confident. And then you might hear the leader say something like, nobody takes responsibility. But responsibility has to be given before it can be taken. And that responsibility has got to be supported with clear expectations, useful information, agreed standards, and honest feedback. Because delegation isn't simply handing over a task. That's actually abdication. Delegation is developing someone's ability to own the result. And that might require more time initially, but it creates time later on. So doing everything yourself today feels quicker, but developing your team creates a stronger business tomorrow. A really useful question to ask yourself is, what does your business need from you now? Not what's shouting the loudest, not what's landed in my inbox, not who's interrupted me. What does the business genuinely need from you now? Now, it may need you to make a decision that you've been avoiding. It may need you to clarify a role. It may need you to review the numbers. It might need you to address a margins problem. It might need you to have that difficult conversation. It might need you to document one of them processes that's trapped in your head. It might need you to stop being the answer to every question. The important work is not always the most urgent looking work, but it's often the work that changes the future. So here's your momentum move for this week. Take a few minutes to answer 3 questions. Question 1, what is one task I need to stop doing? Question 2 is, what recurring problem do I need to address at its cause? What recurring problem do I need to address at its cause? And then question 3 is, what is one high impact action I can take this week that will make the business stronger next month? Keep it simple, one answer to each question, then act on every answer, because clarity without action changes nothing. And the truth is, you probably don't need to prove that you can work hard, you've already done that. The next stage is proving that you can build a business that doesn't require you to keep working harder just to hold everything together. Okay, if today's session has got you to recognise that you're working hard, you're not making the progress that you'd like, then maybe it's time to step back and look at what's really causing that. And sometimes the most useful way to do that is to sit down and have a conversation with someone who can look at your business from a different perspective. Not a sales conversation, just an honest conversation about where you are now, where you want the business to go, and identifying what's really getting in the way. Now, if that sounds useful, DM the word conversation or follow the link in the comments and we can arrange a time to talk. So thank you for joining me today, and remember, hard work matters, it really does. But the real progress begins when your hard work starts building a business that works for you rather than one that only works because of you. Have a fabulous and really profitable week, and I will see you at the same time, same place next week.